We're going to head out to the phone lines, the Bordas and Bordas hotline, and hear what you guys have to think out there. Let's go out to Dave in Bell Vernon. How you doing, Dave?
How you doing there? I always enjoy the show.
Thanks for calling.
Hey, listen, I was listening to Fox Sports this morning, and that guy from the Herd, he was talking. He said, Colin, he said, he rated all the teams. He had Pittsburgh, I couldn't believe it, number 6. But anyway, he said, the reason that the Steelers will not make the Super Bowl, in his opinion, is he said Bell will have 250 carries by that time, and he'll be shot. He said no back can hold up that long. That's simple, very simple. And I thought I'd just mention it tonight.
Well, Dave, I appreciate the call. I mean, he was the, he carried the load last year, Gene, and he got hurt in that New England game. Maybe it would have been a different game if he doesn't get hurt. I expect him to carry the load again. That's how the Steelers have been winning. And, yeah, maybe he will tire out, but he doesn't look tired right now, says he isn't tired and wants the ball more. So I think they have a good pulse and a good feel. It's just about keeping him healthy and not getting an injury, I think.
Yeah, I think Bell actually hurt himself in the Kansas City game in the postseason, and then, played at New England hoping it would be okay, and it was not. He could only go a couple of plays. But, I mean, nobody has more invested in how Le'Veon Bell plays, particularly in the postseason, than the Steelers. So I kind of trust them to, monitor that and have a lot more understanding of that situation than Colin Cowherd, all due respect.
Yeah, and Le'Veon Bell. I mean, this guy is basically, bet on himself. Yeah. Not taking that deal, and I don't know if he wants to jeopardize any of that in the last few games,
sure.
Because you're talking about millions and millions of dollars for Le'Veon Bell. I don't see the Steelers being the 6th team. I mean, they're probably going to get a bye in the first round, and that first game is going to be at home. I'm not saying that they're going to win that first game. Who knows? They could face a Kansas City team. You could get Oakland, Jacksonville could come back here.
Yeah.
Any one of these teams. It's not a given that they win that first round game, second round game, and head to the AFC Championship. But I like their chances being at home.
Yeah, I mean, someone rated them today as an 88% likelihood that they'll make the playoffs, and that may or may not be. I don't have them in the playoffs yet. I'm not. I wouldn't disagree with 6, whatever Colin pulled out of his hat there.
Yeah.
I mean, is it possible that there are 5 better teams than the Steelers? Yeah, sure.
Yeah, you're right. But right now, I would take the Steelers over just about. I think the Steelers and about 3 other teams have the same chances of getting to the Super Bowl. All right, let's go out to the phone lines. We're going to go out to Katie in Indiana. How you doing, Katie?
Hey, how are you?
Good, thanks for calling.
Good. Hey, I just wanted to do a shout out to Villanueva. He spent the afternoon out at the VA and went and visited my grandfather. Oh. And it really made his day. It made my family's day to have him there. He is a personal favorite of my father and my grandfather as well. And I just wanted to put a thank you out there to him and to the Steelers for taking him out there.
Sure.
Yeah, thanks, Katie. I appreciate that. I saw that tweet online in the picture.
Nice.
And, yeah, I mean, Villanueva is just a one-of-a-kind guy. I mean, the guy is one of the best guys in that locker room. They're all pretty good guys, but Villanueva, for what he's done in his life, yes, definitely stands out. He's definitely a one-of-a-kind guy.
That was a great thing he did today.
Yeah, definitely. All right, back out to the phone lines. Let's go out to Sean in Moon Township. How you doing, Sean?
Hey, what's happening, guys?
Hey,
I wanted to touch base real quick. I've been listening to a lot of the pundits on the big, sports radio stations, and they've been ranking the top 10 quarterbacks of the league, and they kind of have been on the outs. He's usually like a number 11 or 12. I wanted to hear what your take on that is. I mean, I feel like he's still kind of in that zone, but he's definitely kind of on the the back end of his career. I wanted to see what you guys thought about that.
Hey, thanks a lot, Sean. He's on the back end of his career, but I can't name 9 better quarterbacks than Ben, or 9 quarterbacks that I would want to be the quarterback of my team right now. I might be able to name 5, but I still have Ben in that middle tier, maybe not the top 2 or 3, but he's a guy that I don't know if there's too many quarterbacks out there that I would much rather have as the quarterback of the team that I'm rooting for.
I think that's a true statement. I would agree with that statement. But I think part of it is a function of who's playing quarterback in the NFL. Don't forget there are 6, 8 first team quarterbacks who aren't playing. So to have Ben 11 or 12 or whatever's being discussed, I don't have any problem with that. I think that's about where he is.
Statistically. But I mean, are there, how many guys could you?
Yeah, are there 10 guys I'd rather have start than Ben? Maybe not 10. You're right. But I mean, look at his quarterback. His quarterback rating is not the best in the division.
You're right.
For example,
Yeah.
You know, so.
Yeah, but I'd much rather have him as the quarterback than anyone in the Steelers division. I mean, Flacco, Dalton. Flacco might have better numbers, or Dalton.
Dalton has better numbers.
But I don't know if I'd.
He's younger.
Yeah, I don't know if I wouldn't. I don't think I'd rather have either one of those guys. Even if you only get 3 more years of Ben Roethlisberger, I'd rather have that than 10 years of Andy Dalton or 8 years left of him.
Okay.
That's just my opinion. I mean,
I know, that's all right. You're allowed.
Let's go out to John in Heidelberg. How you doing, John?
Yeah, I want to ask a question, gentlemen, and I'll hang up and listen to your answer. Why does the Steelers not run play action more often or ever?
Well, I mean, I've seen a little bit of it, but I just think it's play calling. I don't know. They don't do a lot of things that I think a lot of fans want them to do out there, Gene.
Yeah, they have kind of gotten away from it, but I think that's kind of a league-wide trend. They still do it. It's not that they're doing none of it, but you're right, they are doing less of it. Part of it is that there isn't always somebody in the backfield with Ben.
Yeah.
They've got a lot of empty sets, and you know, that takes it down a little bit. But I mean, if your premise is that they should do it more, I agree with that. I think play action is very effective. I don't have any empirical evidence that defenses have figured out how not to get sucked in by that fake. I don't know that, but I think it's still effective. Especially
with a running back like Le'Veon Bell, and Ben Roethlisberger always did a good job of selling the play action.
Yeah.
You know, but they've gone to more of that run pass option at the line. It seems like where Ben will change the play. You know, I don't know. When you have the best running back in the league, I think you got to give him the ball the majority of the time. And you know, I would like what we talked about a little bit earlier. Like to see them to go more no huddle, a faster pace sometimes. But you know, that would go against what they've done that's proven to win, and that's run the ball and have Ben throw less than 300 yards. So, all right. Well, we're going to go out to John in Greentree. How you doing, John?
Hey, thanks for taking my call, guy. How you doing today, man?
Yeah, no problem. No problem, guy.
Hey, great win by the Penguins, man.
Yep.
And today's my birthday, so
happy birthday, John.
Thank you.
John in Greentree, thanks for calling. Happy birthday. Good win for the Penguins. Yeah. You know, 3-1 win against a team that's the worst team in the NHL.
You better beat them 3-1.
Yeah, you better beat them. I would think you beat them more than 3-1. But they've always run against a pretty good goalie. And just like Robert Kemble just tweeted me, goaltenders seem to be outstanding against the Penguins. Why do you think that's okay? I think they've been outstanding because you're playing the two-time defending Stanley Cup champion. And I think these are games that teams get up for. There's a target on the Penguins' back every building that they go into, every game that they play.
Yeah, sure. I feel bad for Rick Tocchet. I really like him, and he's facing a long, long winter.
Yeah, and it's going to be, you know, I mean, maybe you can get things turned around. I mean, you can get things turned around quicker in the NHL than I think a lot of other sports. I mean, so who knows? Maybe they can make right moves in the offseason. But
they need some players.
They definitely need some players. But Rick Tocchet is a good guy, and maybe one day if he gets an opportunity, will be a good head coach. All right, well, we got to take a break. Back, take more of your phone calls coming up in the next 2 minutes. Stay right there.